Great. I declare open the public hearing of the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Law Enforcement for its examination of the Australian Federal Police Annual Report 2023-24. I begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we meet and pay my respects to elders past and present, and I extend the respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. These are public proceedings being video streamed live via the parliamentary website, and a Hansard transcript is being made. I remind all witnesses that in giving evidence to the committee, they are protected by parliamentary privilege. It is unlawful for anyone to threaten or disadvantage a witness on account of evidence given to a committee, and such action may be treated by the Senate as contempt. It is also a contempt to give false or misleading evidence. Witnesses also have a right to request to be heard in camera. The Senate has resolved that an officer of the Department of the Commonwealth or of a state shall not be asked to give opinions on matters of policy and shall be given reasonable opportunity to refer questions asked of officers to superior officers or to a minister. This resolution does not preclude questions asking for explanations of policies or factual questions about when and how policies were adopted. If a witness objects to answering a question, they should state the ground on which the objection is being made, and the committee will determine whether it will insist on all answers having regard to the ground on which it is claimed. If the committee determines to insist on an answer, a witness may request that the answers be given in camera. Commonwealth officers appearing today are also reminded of the Senate order specifying by process by which a claim of public interest immunity shall be raised. A copy of the order is available from the Secretariat. If there are no objections from the committee members, I propose the committee agree Friday the 21st of Friday as the date for responses to any questions that are taken on notice.
21st of what?
The 21st of February. I now welcome Commissioner Kershaw and other officers from the Australian Federal Police. I understand that information on parliamentary privilege and the protection of witnesses giving evidence to Senate committees has been provided to you. For the Hansard record, will you please state your full names and capacity in which you appear before us today?
Rhys Kershaw, the AFP Commissioner.
Chrissy Barrett, Deputy Commissioner, National Security.
Stephen Nutt, the Assistant Commissioner for Counter-Terrorism and Special Investigations.
Ian McCartney, the Deputy Commissioner of Crime, AFP.
Lisa Gale, Deputy Commissioner for International and Specialist Capabilities.
Catherine Van Ger, Chief Operating Officer.
Paul Wood, Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you. I now invite you to make a short opening statement, and at the conclusion of any remarks, I will invite members of the committee to ask some questions.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, committee members. It is a pleasure to be here today to discuss the AFP's 2023-24 annual report and share some of our significant achievements and operational outcomes. The continued commitment of the AFP during times of rapid changes in the geopolitical, economic and criminal threat environments is only possible through the hard work and dedication of our members. Our priority is to ensure the safety and protection of Australian lives, livelihoods and the interests of the Australian Commonwealth. This past financial year, we achieved important results, including protecting our community from transnational serious and organised crime under Operation Avarice Nightwolf and Operation Gain, countering child sexual exploitation and human exploitation under Operation Tenterfield and Operation Dolunay, disrupting high-volume cybercrime under Operation Aquila, and responding to fraud and corruption against the Commonwealth under Operation Elbrus. These results align with the refreshed ministerial direction issued by the Attorney-General and my statement of intent in response. Our significant operational successes include the seizure of 31.3 tonnes of illicit drugs and precursors, over $175.5 million in assets restrained, 318 people charged with offences and responding to over 22,460 incidents at international airports. Despite the complex geopolitical tensions we are currently seeing globally, the AFP continues to maintain a strong international presence, constantly enhancing relationships with our key partners. Globally, the AFP is respected as a law enforcement partner of choice due to our ongoing operational successes and innovative specialist capabilities. We are present in 34 countries and have delivered 7 police development missions. A key mission success saw 100 AFP members deployed to Solomon Islands as partners to ensure the safety and security of the 2023 Pacific Games. Our presence continued to support the 2024 Solomon Islands National General Election. Now, even more so, the AFP's relationship with our Pacific partners is crucial. We continue to work collaboratively with the Pacific to build capacity and support key events, maintain stability and security of communities, train and uplift our partners, and prevent, disrupt and respond to criminal activity. Espionage and foreign interference represent a serious threat to Australia's sovereignty and the security and integrity of our national institutions. On 29 February 2024, a Melbourne man was sentenced for a foreign interference offence investigated under Operation Fruitov, led by the Counter Foreign Interference Task Force. It was the first conviction for a foreign interference offence since the legislation was introduced in 2018 and followed a complex year-long investigation by the AFP and its partners. Our commitment to supporting enterprise-wide uplift of diversity and inclusion to enhance our operational readiness and build a psychologically and culturally safe workplace saw the launch of the AFP Gender Equity Action Plan 2024 to 26. We also made significant progress against the implementation of Respect at Work initiatives. I'm also proud to say that for the first time in the AFP's history, we have 2 serving female Deputy Commissioners, representing 50% of our sworn Deputy Commissioners. Looking to the future, I anticipate that 2025 will see the high operational tempo continue. As our partnerships develop, political environments evolve and the threats to Australian lives and livelihoods continue to change, we need to ensure that our agency is prepared for all eventualities. We will continue to invest in the recruitment of new members to ensure we have a modern, diverse workforce with the specialist capabilities and operational readiness required to meet new and emerging challenges. I would like to reiterate the respect the AFP has for this committee and the work it does in reviewing our annual reports. The insights it provides to criminal justice topics helps us to develop our capabilities and ensures we are delivering on our capabilities. I now welcome the committee's questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. I might ask a few questions before I go to the Deputy Chair. I was just wondering if you could give us a bit more detail about what work you're doing in the Pacific, what sort of interactions have been taking place and what sort of initiatives have been implemented since our last annual report.
Thank you, Chair, and if I can, I'll hand over to the Deputy Commissioner responsible for doing some great work.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Chair. I would echo the Commissioner's comments that our members, both onshore and offshore across the Pacific, are doing some amazing work in partnership with our Pacific nations. As you would be aware, there was the investment of over $400 million over the next 5 years in terms of the Pacific Policing Initiative. Last year we saw significantly of the 3 pillars that are driven through that initiative, the launch of the Pinken Bar Hub, opened by the Attorney General and the Commissioner. We at that time had representatives from the majority of our Pacific nations present for the opening and the launch, just reinforcing that cooperation and support from our Pacific nations. If I could touch on a couple of really key initiatives that we have been driving throughout the last 12 months in particular. We saw the horrendous natural disaster in Vanuatu towards the end of last year, and really pleasingly to say that we were able to deploy members under our PPSG, that was AFP in partnership with a number of our Pacific nations, to support Vanuatu with that disaster, and that was one of the first deployments of that kind post-CHOGM, where we saw our Pacific nations coming together to support that significant forum in Samoa. We have been also implementing a number of other significant reforms across the Pacific, Chair. If I can touch on a couple of them, working with our international partners through the Interpol Pacific, Blue Pacific, program. That's a heavy investment in terms of ensuring that cooperation globally in terms of support to our Pacific partners. We're working with the RPNGC on the expansion in Papua New Guinea, and notably for us is the less than lethal force training that we're undertaking with officers from the RPNGC. That particularly has improved transparency and accountability in terms of some of the training delivered for less than lethal options. We're providing dedicated support to maritime across the Pacific. We know that is a key gap for a number of our Pacific partners, so we're working closely both domestically with our partners in Defence and ABF, but also across the Pacific on how we can strengthen the maritime borders for the Pacific. We've also invested more of our own officers. So we have more of our own officers seconded into the Pacific. We're working on the development of a number of centres of excellence, notably in 5 key Pacific countries, and Fiji being one where we hope to launch a centre of excellence in relation to forensics. And those centres of excellence will provide resources, capability from across the Pacific for the Pacific. We have, as I mentioned, 5 of those that we're working on. We also have the growth with the Solomon Islands and the importance of the Solomon Islands recruitment, and we're working in cooperation through our members that are deployed there in terms of supporting the Solomon Islands government with the expansion of their recruitment targets that they have going forward.
In relation to the hub, could you give us a little bit more detail about how that is actually going to impact the policing initiatives that are in place and how that's going to work? Just step us through that.
Yes, Chair. So we very much, the hub is located in Pinkenba in Brisbane, and it provides training facilities but also accommodation where we can bring partners from across the Pacific, and we actually are doing that now. We have already commenced training in the hub. We also have another training centre close by that's also fit for purpose for the delivery of capability uplift for across the Pacific. And so the hub will provide the ability for us to train up and have officers from across the Pacific, accommodation and the like, train together, live together for periods of time while we develop particularly the policing support, the Pacific Policing Support Group, that we very much see as very much an agile, deployable pool of Pacific officers that can deploy where the need arises, particularly from a security perspective. As the Commissioner mentioned in his opening statement, we've supported Solomon Islands through their general election, through the Pacific Games and the like, and through CHOGM, and that's where we see the modelling of that particular group that will bring together through the hub to be able to provide that capability uplift that us together with our Pacific partners can utilise to develop and train members to go forward across the Pacific.
How important has the relationship between the AFP and the Pacific Islands been in terms of the policing initiatives?
I would say, Chair, the relationship is critical. And I can quite proudly, and I'm sure the Commissioner will also reinforce this, we're very proud of the dedication and commitment of our members that are located across the Pacific and the efforts that they undertake to develop the partnerships with our Pacific law enforcement partners. And I would say the fact that we have long-standing, enduring friendships, we see ourselves almost as a Pacific family, that those long-standing relationships we have with our law enforcement colleagues hold us in good stead to support our neighbours, really, as we go forward in strengthening, our efforts for security across our region.
And it's also important, Chair, for the rule of law to exist within our region and make sure all of our democracies are sharing intelligence and information around some of the threats we face. And transnational organised crime in the Pacific is a high-level threat, as is foreign interference and espionage. And we've been able to train a number of officers in looking for that identification of, obviously, organised crime and then acting on that. And we've also been able to, I just came back from that facility this morning, where I was showcasing our capabilities to the French gendarmerie, and they have an interest in the Pacific as well. And as the Deputy said, we have a saying, it's, for the Pacific, by the Pacific, and everything that the Deputy's command has been doing is through consultation, but also designing it for the Pacific needs and making sure that we're building police forces that have the rule of law, our democratic values at the forefront of everything that we do.
I can also highlight, Chair, through the new measures and budget variations that were announced as part of my EFO 2024-25, we did receive an additional $278.9 million over 4.5 years. So that measure released the remainder of the contingency funding that was held as under the Pacific Policing Initiative. So that will go directly to the Centres of Excellence that Deputy Commissioner Gale mentioned.
Thank you. I will come back to we have some more questions, but Deputy Chair, Mr O'Brien.
Thanks, Chair. Firstly, I said this before, but I want to reiterate it as it was raised in the introduction. I want to put my appreciation on the record for the work done with Operation Tenterfield. The sheer number of victims involved in that horrible investigation means that many of us have victims in our electorates, and I do, and the conviction and ultimate sentence of that offender was a relief to many people. So thank you once again for that. The report, the report is well done on a comprehensive report, and well done on a good year. Community confidence is very important, particularly in the area of national security and combating terrorism, and I notice that you have 81%, which is a significantly high number when it comes to your community survey. And in your highlights, you have listed 13 people were charged with terrorism-related operations by the AFP and joint counter-terrorism team partners. Can you just talk to me about the collaboration that occurs, making sure that you have an all-of-government agency approach to these things and how you do that?
Yeah, if I could hand over to the Deputy responsible.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. It has, fair to say, been quite a big year in relation to national security for us as the AFP, not just in the counter-terrorism landscape, but also with the establishment of Operation Avalite to combat the anti-Semitic incidents that we're seeing across the country. And in both of those joint arrangements, obviously partnerships are critical. We rely on our partners so that we can bring together the strength of all of our capabilities, the strength of all of our information holdings, intel holdings, technical capabilities, partnerships offshore. We speak a lot in the AFP about, offshore elements who are impacting on Australia, so to have some of those partner agencies working directly alongside us as well. The strength of the joint counter-terrorism teams, again, we talk about them often. We've had them established for over 20 years now, and time and again we've shown this country how effective they are in preventing terrorist attacks and keeping this country safe.
Thanks. In terms of ensuring that investigations are escalated to the appropriate level, do ministerial briefings play a part in ensuring that, and how do they occur when it comes to major incidents, national security incidents?
You're talking generally? So generally, we have various governance and protocols that we rely on. Also, obviously, as I said, the maturity of the joint counter-terrorism teams, the well-entrenched practices within those teams in terms of how do we ensure that we're protecting not only the security and the integrity of an investigation, but also the safety of our members, the safety of the community. That is always at the forefront of any decision-making in the joint counter-terrorism teams. As you would appreciate, by and large, the vast majority of JCTT investigations are covert investigations. That gives us the ability to do what we need to do. It gives us the ability to access the full suite of operational strategies that we may need to employ, as I said, to keep the community safe, which is obviously our number one priority and always at the forefront of our decision making.
Is there a threshold that occurs or needs to be reached before there is a ministerial reporting obligation?
What I would say to that is these matters are always a case-by-case basis. There are people at this table that have been in national security longer than me that will tell you there is no matter that is one and the same. Every matter is different. There are always unique considerations that need to be taken into consideration, and particularly in a joint space where we have to work very closely with partners. So it's very difficult for me to answer that question.
So, in terms of sensitive investigations, how are they? Who are they overseen by, and at what level of the organisation?
Could you please clarify, because sensitive investigations, the way you describe them, may be different to the way that the AFP describes sensitive investigations.
So a national security incident that, say, would come under the Sensitive Investigation Oversight Board. At what level does that operate?
Right, so we have a Sensitive Investigations Oversight Board which has very strong governance in place. That oversights sensitive investigations within the AFP. When it comes to joint counter-terrorism investigations, of course, they're not AFP-only investigations. They do not sit under this SIOM because that is an internal AFP mechanism. What oversights the JCTT is a layered governance bodies. So you have a coordination group, and then at the Assistant Commissioner level you have a joint management committee, and that is where the decision making and the oversight it comes into the construct.
Do they have any role in determining whether a ministerial briefing on a serious investigation is to be had?
Again, as I said to you, it's a case-by-case basis. The Joint Management Committee has various roles and tasks that they undertake when we have joint counter-terrorism matters.
So what would be the purpose of a ministerial briefing?
For a terrorism matter, or there's a number of purposes, and we, as I said, we have to consider each one on a case-by-case basis. So it's difficult for me, I guess, to succinctly describe that to you because every matter is unique and there are different elements that need to be considered, as well as the broader environment that we might be operating in.
Do ministerial briefings occur? How often do they occur in relation to terrorism investigations?
They occur as often as they need to when it's deemed appropriate, that we need to commence a ministerial briefing process. But I don't have numbers in front of me, I'm sorry, in terms of how many times or how often that happens.
Does it form an important part of the process?
Of course it does, and we determine, based on a number of factors, when it is appropriate to do those briefings. Again, I'll reiterate, we are privy to information that others external to the JCTT are not. And we have very experienced, very mature investigators and senior decision makers that operate within that construct that will decide when it is appropriate to brief and why it is appropriate to brief. I said to you, it's hard to describe that in a general sense because it needs to be done on a case-by-case basis.
Mm-hmm. That's all from me, thanks.
Senator Shoebridge, do you have some questions?
Oh, yeah, I do, actually. Thanks, Chair. Thanks very much for your attendance today. One of the processes before briefings are given from police to senior politicians, Prime Minister, Attorney, is the Sensitive Investigations Oversight Board. Is that still in place?
That is, Senator, yes.
Do you want to explain to us what the Sensitive Investigations Oversight Board is?
Yeah.
That's Deputy Commissioner. It used to be you, Deputy Commissioner McCartney. Who is it now?
So I think it's been well spoken about that we did implement a Sensitive Investigations Oversight Board. It came out of a review that retired Deputy John Lawler did, which the Commissioner instigated, I think, in 2019, 2020. Mm-hmm. And the purpose of that board is to provide strategic oversight to investigations in the AFP that meet a number of criteria to be determined as sensitive investigations.
All right. And so have you got the terms? Can you access the terms of reference there? What are the criteria?
I don't have the terms of reference in front of me. And
well, who chairs the committee?
Sorry?
Who chairs the committee or the board?
I chair the committee.
Well,
yes.
Then you must be aware of the matters that are taken into account when deciding about, for example, whether or not matters would be elevated and a minister would be briefed. And I think that's one of its functions, isn't it? Deciding when a minister would be briefed about a matter. Is that one of its functions?
Yes. I'm actually may need to take on notice because I'm not sure what's been publicly shared in terms of the board, unless my other deputy can help me.
Well, why don't we just start with something very simple? One of the functions of the board is to decide when a matter should be escalated up and the minister should be briefed. You chair the board. You must know that that's part of what the board does.
That's not my issue, Senator. My issue is I'm not sure what's publicly available in terms of how the SIOB operates and its terms of reference. So
it was covered in public in great deal in the Brittany Higgins matter.
You've asked a question. Please allow the officer to respond without jumping in with your next question. You have the call, Ms. Barrett.
Thank you. The terms of reference, as far as I'm aware, are not publicly available. So I'm just being cautious in answering your questions in relation to a board and a document that is not publicly available. And we're in a public hearing.
Well, the existence of the board and the fact the board was repeatedly used before matters were brought to the then Home Affairs Minister's attention and the Prime Minister's attention in the Brittany Higgins case has been widely reported. Before the then Prime Minister was briefed, before the then Home Affairs Minister was briefed, the board, the Sensitive Investigations Oversight Board met and worked out whether or not it met the threshold to tell the Minister. I see you nodding, Commissioner Kershaw. You remember that the media coverage and the fact that that's public knowledge. You agree with that?
That piece I agree with, yes.
Yeah. So I come back to the fact that you chair the board, Deputy Commissioner Barrett. You know that's one of the functions of the board, don't you? Or do you disagree with the Commissioner?
that is one of the considerations of the board. And I did just clarify with the previous line of questioning that only AFP matters go to the SIOB, not joint matters. So just to clarify that as well.
So is that because of the terms of reference of the SIOB prevent joint matters going to the SIOB? Or is it just a policy position?
The SIOB is an AFP-only board and it's formed from AFP members. So as part of the scope and the remit of the board, it oversights AFP sensitive investigations.
So if it's just an AFP sensitive investigation before the Minister or the Prime Minister are briefed, it goes to the board?
Not all sensitive investigations in the AFP are oversighted by the board. There are other sensitive investigations within the AFP that don't come before the board, because there are many sensitive investigations per the criteria that are in the AFP.
So if it's a joint investigation, if the board doesn't consider whether or not the Minister should be briefed, if there's a joint investigation, maybe it's one of the joint terrorism investigations, what's the process inside the AFP for determining whether or not the Minister and or Prime Minister would be briefed?
Just so that I can clarify, Senator, is that for counter-terrorism matters?
Joint counter-terrorism matters.
So I did just allude to or articulate some of that with the previous line of questioning. There is a governance and a chain of committees that exist in the joint counter-terrorism space, and that's the appropriate place for joint decisions to be made that do not come under the SIOB. Counter-terrorism jobs do not sit under the oversight of the SIOB.
So what's the joint committee? If you say that's where the decision would be made, what's the joint committee that would decide what you, as the AFP, tell your Minister about your actions in a joint counter-terrorism matter?
So there's a joint management committee that sits over the top of the joint counter-terrorism team. It's at the Assistant Commissioner level, and under certain circumstances, Deputy Commissioners may also attend that Joint Management Committee. Each agency also has, of course, its own internal governance or guidance around when it may be appropriate to brief a Minister, and then collectively the agencies will discuss and come to an agreement around if and when briefings will be done.
And I assume you've sat on those joint management committees?
I don't ordinarily. It's at Assistant Commissioner level. Assistant
Commissioner Nutt, you've sat on those committees?
I sit on all of the joint management committees in the joint counter-terrorism arrangement, often as chair, Senator.
Right. And is it your understanding that state police also follow that protocol before they brief their ministers? It comes to that joint committee, or do they?
Well, what I can say on that, Senator, is that it's as a committee we bring agencies together, and in most jurisdictions there's three agencies: the State Police, AFP, and ASIO. And in New South Wales, it's also the New South Wales Crime Commission. They make up the national counter-terrorism arrangements. And so each agency brings together under those national arrangements their own issues, plus also arrangements for us to discuss and agree collectively on operational matters and the management of counter-terrorism matters.
So let's go to New South Wales. Is it your understanding that the New South Wales Crime Commission and the New South Wales Police...
This is your final question before we hand over to someone
the
else.
New South Wales Crime Commission and the New South Wales Police get a sign-off from that joint committee before they brief their ministers and before they brief the Premier of New South Wales, Assistant Commissioner? You sit on the committee. What's your understanding?
I do. So just looking.
Senator, it might also be helpful to share that there is a memorandum of understanding, which is all of the states and territories are signatory to that, as are the Commonwealth agencies. That obviously contains a raft of information about the arrangements and the management of the joint counter-terrorism.
Does that answer my question?
Committees.
What I can assist or add to that is that the MOU governs how it's not a sign-off process. It's around principles of consultation. And that's as far as the arrangements go, because ultimately it is the jurisdictions themselves taking into account their own considerations around how matters occur. And it depends on the type of matter too, Senator. So some are very much in the state police hands, some are in the Commonwealth hands, some are in ASIO's hands. So that's why it's on a case-by-case basis, and there's no one-size-fits-all.
So the idea, for example,
Senator
that the
Shoebridge, I'm
AFP
going
would
to
be
Mr
hamstrung by a joint
Rappioli.
committee.
You've had your time, and we're going to Mr Rappioli.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you all for being here today, and thank you for what you all do, and also the personnel of the AFP do for all of us to keep us safe like you do. So thank you. Can you just give us a current overview of the AFP workforce, and how are the recruitment efforts going to bolster the AFP right now? And also, is there any limitations and things you need to work on at this stage over the next year?
Thank you. Happy to take that question. As at the end of December, 31st of December, our headcount was 8,097 with a workforce of 7,585 FTE. In terms of our recruitment, we continue to have a significant number of recruitment. The last 12 months, we've had approximately 170 people graduate through our college, sworn members, hitting our workforce. We continue with our range of recruitment and recruitment reforms to ensure that we're meeting our workforce targets, including recently establishing a new recruitment branch, noting a range of pressures that we've got coming with new and emerging roles and responsibilities for the AFP. One thing we continue to watch that has been an interest of in this committee and also in Senate estimates is our attrition rates. That still holds steady in terms of police attrition. We sit at 5.1%, which is consistent for the last few years, but it's obviously something we continue to monitor, noting the competitiveness in the environment that we're recruiting from.
And are the numbers about right now, or you're obviously constantly on the lookout, obviously, as nearly every industry in this country is right now? What kind of numbers short would you be currently?
We're currently sitting around 2.5% below our budgeted FTE, but that's a continual thing, monitoring sort of numbers coming in, numbers going out, but yeah, we're confident with the numbers we have at the moment.
Excellent, thank you. And looking ahead into 24-25, obviously the National Firearms Register is a big thing. Can you tell me how this work is progressing, and do you guys have the technical expertise to actually pull this off?
Yep, so certainly we did receive some funding from the government for the AFP's portion of that project. So obviously that's a project that's led by the Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission. Our project's focused on ensuring our data can link into the system once it's been built by the ACIC. In terms of our project, it's progressing on track. Is the briefing that I've received.
Yeah, just to add some numbers to that, we received $1 million for 1 year. That includes funding for 3.3 ASL. So we're working on integrating our current firearms reporting systems into the new National Firearms Register. Chief Operating Officer is responsible for our Chief Information Officer command and keeps a very, very close eye on that. And so, yeah, we're progressing on that. And if I could just note, Senator Watts, we were talking numbers. The recently tabled portfolio additional estimate statements also includes additional funding to continue to grow our workforce. In the most recent tabled document, our average staffing level has now increased to 7,971. And I know when we're talking numbers, it gets a little bit confusing with headcount and FTE and ASL, but just, I guess, some advice to the committee is that, yeah, we continue to gratefully receive funding from government to continue to grow our workforce.
Excellent. My final question, Chair, is around the lines. We've been lucky enough to come out and see you guys many times, and thank you for that. You did take us through your what you do to help look after the mental health of your team. How is that program going?
Yeah, that shield.
Yep.
It's going very well. I mean, we've been able to. One of the things with police has always been an issue is accessing services and not feeling I guess that you're failing. We've encouraged early access, early intervention, and that has been working for us. I think we've got really top practitioners, whether they're physios and other professions who supply that service to our members, and we've received really good feedback about the fact that the organisation cares and that we're looking after our people. Given that our operating environment is changing rapidly, it's I would say way more complex than we've ever seen, and there's a lot of threats, and our members do get injured at times. But the mental health side of it has been, I think, quite refreshing for our front end in particular, to be able to access those services early. And I might just hand to the Coup to say a few things as well.
Thank you, Commissioner. So our SHIELD program really is focused on that whole career lifespan of our members, noting that it's unfortunately an unavoidable reality that they will be exposed to a range of physical and psychological stresses throughout their career. We did just this week at our Strategy and Performance Board endorse a new AFP health and wellbeing strategy beyond 2024. So that was following significant workforce consultation that will soon launch formally across the agency. So we're really pleased with that. We do continue to get positive feedback, as the Commissioner raised, from our staff members through our staff surveys around our efforts in the health and wellbeing space, but it's certainly something that we're continuing to improve and continuing to focus on as important for our flexible and agile workforce.
And just with reference to our annual report, we do know that since the introduction of SHIELD in 2021, there's been a 23% increase in the uptake of those early access services, and in 23-24 we had 355 members who have provided early access treatment through that early access program.
Excellent, thank you. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Ms Miller Frost.
Thank you. Look, just following on from that, there was in the annual report a reference to the coronial inquest of the 3 officers in the ACT. And obviously this feeds into what you've just been talking about, but can you just give us a little bit of an overview on the sorts of actions that you've taken since the coroner's recommendations, and particularly around the increased governance around access to firearms?
Yes, thank you, Minister. It certainly is a significant focus for us. We've established an operational safety committee that is chaired by one of our Deputy Commissioners, Deputy Commissioner Scott Lee, that is progressing a range of work around our controls in access to firearms. Our access to firearms is governed by a Commissioner's order. Apologies, I'm just finding my brief. Which is CO1, which defines sort of how they can access, in what circumstances they can access firearms. We also have, in terms of our health services, leaned in, and the psychological services and assessments that we do of our staff members, particularly in high-risk roles, which impacts in terms of their access as well. But we have been strengthening that governance continually.
You have to go. Quick answer, a quick question. I was just going to ask, in terms of countering foreign interference task force, is this an area that is growing in concern, about the same, or are you getting on top of it? So I'm about to run as well, so you have a really brief.
Yeah, can I have a short, quick one?
You can ask the question, but I'm not sure you'll get time to state.
Yeah, it's all right. I just want to praise all of you hard work. As a former police officer in WA, I visited a few countries, Vanuatu, Malaysia. Every time I'll go for AFP. And I see only happy officer. Well done.
Thank you.
No worries. Thank you. Can I just follow up, though, with the time before we go back? Did you want a follow-up question first?
Yeah,
okay.
Did you want to go first, Chair?
No,
or do you want me to
you go.
Okay.
You go.
Just Operation Larimar, which is obviously provided as a case study in the report. The recent detection of explosives and that investigation, did that come under Operation Larimar?
No, Operation Larimar has a different remit. It's now been subsumed by events. So we now have Special Operation Avalite, which is our primary obviously operation focusing on anti-Semitic incidents, and then we still have our normal joint counter-terrorism teams operating in each state and territory.
So that investigation came under Operation, sorry, what was the name of it again?
Sorry.
Avalite.
Oh, no, sorry. The Joint Counter-Terrorism Team is where the matter that you're referring to, it sits in the New South Wales Joint Counter-Terrorism Team.
Was the Prime Minister briefed on that incident or that investigation, or the Minister, the relevant Minister for the department?
Is this coming out of the annual report for 23-24?
Well, we're talking about...
Or are you talking about...
We're talking about public confidence, and this has been a very prominent issue, and we can't perform law enforcement successfully without the community having confidence, and I think it's a relevant question. So was the Prime Minister briefed on that incident, or the Attorney-General?
Look, I think it's... I understand why you're asking the question, but I think in light of the fact that we're here to talk about the annual report, if you want to talk about general confidence, don't have an issue with that. But if you're going to go for an ongoing investigation, then it's not appropriate out of the 2023-24 annual report. Yeah. So if you want to keep it in general...
I'm speaking about terrorism, which is in the report.
Terms, then we can talk about it in general terms.
And there are cases and examples given, and I'm seeking an answer to my question if the Prime Minister or the Attorney-General were briefed, and if so, when?
What I would say is that question relates to an ongoing Joint Counter-Terrorism Team investigation, and according to the briefings I've received, that's not the subject or purpose of today's hearing. And also, I am conscious that this is a public hearing and it's not an appropriate forum for us to provide information relating to an ongoing investigation at this time.
The question is simply about when the Prime Minister was briefed. That in no way could prejudice a criminal investigation. Your annual report repeatedly talks about counter-terrorism.
Senator Shoebridge,
you should insist upon the committee being respected and an answer being given.
We've had the answer from the Commissioner. I just want to draw, so that we're all very clear what this hearing is about, and I draw the committee's attention to the role of the committee, which is contained in the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Law Enforcement Act 2010, Section 7 outlines the functions of the committee, and it also details functions that are not included. Specifically, I draw the committee's attention to the following. Functions of the committee do not include reviewing sensitive operational information or operational methods available to the AFP, reviewing particular operations or investigations that have been or are proposed to be undertaken by the AFP, and monitoring, reviewing or reporting on the performance of the AFP of its functions under Part 5.3 of the Criminal Code, which is terrorism. This function sits within the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Intelligence and Security. If the committee members, if you can please keep that in mind as to the purpose and the role that we have as a committee, and that we are here reviewing the 2023-24 report. And I think the Commissioner's already made a statement. So if you have other questions, Mr O'Brien?
Well, the question was well within...
Mr O'Brien has the call. Thank you, Senator Shoebridge.
No, that's been addressed.
Okay, then...
questions in relation to the report,
Senator
Chair.
Walsh, then you have the call. And then if we have some more time, we can go to Senator Shoebridge.
Thank you, and thank you all for being with us today. You mentioned before, in answer to questions, the really important place of mental health in the organisation and of the SHIELD program, and the Chief Operating Officer talked about positive feedback about that in your staff survey. I noticed that in relation to staff surveys, there's been a shift in the survey model and perhaps in the timing of the surveys as well. Are you able to explain any changes in terms of how you're conducting the staff surveys and why that is?
Thank you for the question, Senator. We are due to go out for our next full staff survey next Monday, actually, Monday the 10th of February. We had moved a couple of years ago to a model where we do a full census-like survey every second year. So the last survey that we ran, last all-staff survey, was a deep dive on a specific area that came out of the previous full staff survey, and that was around psychological safety specifically. But yes, we are returning to a full staff survey that will open up next Monday. We'll close on the 2nd of March. So as usual, we're using an independent agency to conduct that survey. That's Orima, and the usual process is they'll report the results back to our executive. It'll be shared with the workforce and then made public after that.
And can you speak a little bit more to the organisation's approach to your staff reporting any mental health concerns that they might have? Because one of the challenges for organisations can be that when you put a program in place and you put a big focus on mental health, that you may indeed get more reporting. And sometimes in organisations they might see that as a sign of a problem. Other organisations would welcome that so that they can put measures in place. What's your attitude to any increased reporting that may eventuate from setting up these important programs like SHIELD?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and you are right. As soon as you do set up those systems and particularly our focus on creating that psychologically safe environment, we want people to come forward and we want them to tell us about behaviours they're experiencing, particularly if they're not consistent with our values or consistent with a safe workplace. We don't have a specific view on whether increasing numbers is a bad thing for the agency or a good thing, because they can be interpreted as both, because it could be a good thing to say that we're a safer organisation and people feel that safety to come forward and tell us. But also we do monitor the numbers very closely in terms of what interventions we can make. So the staff survey is but one of those tools and evidence of data that we gather. It's anonymous reporting where staff might be able to say something around behaviours they're experiencing, from whether it's from their leadership or from within their workplace, as well as the reporting that we have through our various mechanisms through our health and wellbeing areas as well. And the confidential reporting that we have through that. So we have a confidant network, we have a welfare officer network, so we have multiple avenues where people can try and find where that safe space for them is to talk about it. But for us as a leadership team, the key is getting that overall picture of the data to understand what's happening with our workforce and what key decisions as leaders we need to make to ensure that it is that safe environment for them.
And Senator, if I could just add in support of my colleague, particularly in some of those areas that our members work that would probably be a higher risk, areas like the ACE, our undercover program, our forensics members, we actually bolster the efforts, particularly to ensure that they feel psychologically safe in a very much a BAU way, so that it normalises talking about the nature of the work they're seeing and any stresses that they may encounter in the course of doing that type of work. So we also, on some occasions, embed, psychologists and the like, and social workers in support of our people, and noting the nature of some of the work that they're doing.
And our SHIELD model also involved rolling out a range of health hubs that sit in our regional offices, so there is that access for staff regardless of what office they're in to a range of different resources that they might be needing.
The Commissioner talked earlier about recruitment and noted the commitment to ensuring strong representation of women, including at the highest levels of the organisation, which we have represented here. And it's obviously, I think, widely understood amongst all organisations that having women of merit in roles across organisations is good for organisational culture in general and for organisational performance. We've talked a little today about recruitment, which is key in underpinning your capacity. How are you going with recruitment of women in different roles in the organisation at different levels?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. So we are committed to being an employer of choice and really focusing on embedding that diversity and inclusion across all aspects of our organisation. In terms of our targets, a few years ago, the Commissioner set us an aspirational target of 30% women in our sworn roles. As at the end of December, we're currently sitting at 26.6% for police. But there are, much higher for unsworn, we're sitting at 60.8%, but there are areas where we still do struggle. For instance, our protective security officers, we're currently sitting at 13.4% female. So some of the work we're doing in our media and communications area really is looking at how we can be more innovative and targeted in our recruitment marketing to target those different diversity cohorts. How do we get people to think about a career in policing that might not otherwise think about that? So some of the new things we've been trialling the past few months is targeting different women's gyms and different clubs, for sporting clubs, women's sporting clubs, just to really try and ramp up that focus, and because it's basically bringing them into the pipeline so that we can ensure that we continue toward our targets of 30% there.
Senator, if I could also add, in support of my colleague, particularly in fields like STEM, forensics, and some of our technical areas, we're also looking to work with or partner with agencies where we can look to, particularly in neurodiversity, that may attract women into some of those really critical roles of back-end support for our frontline officers, some of the tech that they're developing. So we're looking in other ways as well, similarly with women in forensics, some of the work that we're doing in partnership with academia and the like as well to attract and recruit women, particularly in areas that traditionally we wouldn't always see women in.
And thank you, Senator Walsh. We're about to run out of time, but I just wanted to follow up from the question that Ms Miller-Frost asked before she had to leave for the bells. And that was around the threat to our democracy of foreign interference. I was wondering if you could quickly outline AFP's role in disrupting the influence of espionage and foreign interference in this country, because it is of concern to Australia.
Thank you for the question, and I will say that the Director General Security is on record, his last 2 annual threat assessments, I think, where he's nominated espionage, foreign interference as one of, if not the primary national security threat to this country. We are fortunate to have our Counter Foreign Interference Task Force, which is in conjunction with ASIO and other agencies. Unfortunately, we do have a lot of work on in that space, and as the Commissioner highlighted in his opening statement, we have had some results in the last couple of years. We had our first successful prosecution. We have another 2 matters before court. I guess what is the challenging thing about the work that we do in that space is that very often we can't talk about it publicly. So to know that there is a lot of fantastic work going on to combat the very, very serious threats that exist in that crime type. But just know that obviously a lot of that is not overt action being taken by law enforcement. It's other partners undertaking other disruptions, and therefore we often can't highlight how much work is happening, how much good work is happening.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, so that concludes today's hearing. Thank you to all witnesses who gave evidence.
You have to hear from committee members.
I'm sorry?
You actually have to hear from committee members if they're raising a point of order. So I'm raising a point of order.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Senator Shoebridge, what's your point of order?
My point of order is that, first of all, I would seek to move an extension of time for the AFP. There's obviously many more questions for the AFP. I know you would like it to end, but I think
have another hearing
we do,
to follow.
and I'm sure we could can deal with those matters in 40 minutes with the ACIC, but I propose an extension of time for the AFP for another 15 minutes.
Well, we have the program before us, and I'm
Yes,
proposing
we're not
that we will, in that case, we can have a private meeting, but I intend to conclude this hearing.
So you're using the government's numbers to shut down an inquiry about what millions of Australians want an answer on. Using what millions of Australians want an answer on, which is when the Prime Minister was told.
I'm speaking.
When the Prime Minister was told
You've raised your point of order,
terrorism. You're using the government's numbers to shut it down.
Responded.
Okay, I get it.
Very theatrical, but the reality is
you've
when
got the
I'm
numbers and you're going to
speaking
shut it
as
down.
Chair, can I also give a point of order?
Point of order, you want to make...
The committee should now suspend for the private meeting that you have asked for.
Absolutely. We will call a private meeting and we will allow time for members to be part of that. So we will come back, but I am anticipating the meeting will take place and we will conclude today's hearing, and we have other people waiting.
Open-minded chairing of the private meeting.
Well, thank you, Senator Shoebridge. our witnesses who gave evidence and to Hansard and the broadcasters for their assistance. I don't believe there were any questions taken on notice, but if they are, I repeat, they are due by the 21st of February. And I now adjourn the committee so we can move on to our next witnesses. Thank you very much.
From the Albanese government. That's what you get from Labor.